Hello students, today we will be talking about the basics of cell. So what are the cell? Cell are the most important constituent of life. These were first discovered by Leeuwenhoek. So it is so important that it can alone decide an organism is living or non-living. That is, if a cell is present in an organism, it is considered to be living, and if these cells are not present in an organism, it is considered to be non-living. Now, the main properties of these cells are that these are capable of independent existence. Now, what does that mean? This means that even a single cell can perform all the functions that are required for life or that is required for the existence of an organism. So, from all these points, we conclude that all living organisms are made up of cells. So, these living organisms, if we look at them, we find that these living organisms can be classified in two ways. Firstly, on the basis of presence of number of cells in them, and secondly, on the basis of presence or absence of membrane bound cell organelles in them. Now, if we'll classify them on the basis of number of cells in them, we see that there are two groups, unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. The unicellular organisms are the organisms which are made up of single cell, and multicellular organisms are those organisms that are made up of multiple cells or many cells together perform functions or perform duties for their existence. If we look or classify these living organisms on the basis of presence or absence of membrane bound cell organelles, we find that these are of two groups, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now, before this, I would like to make it very clear to you that many of you studying cell for the first time might not be understanding what these cell organelles mean. These cell organelles are nothing but these are distinct structures that are present inside the cell to perform different functions. These are of various kinds like nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. We'll talk about this in our further classes once we go deep into the structure of the cell. Today we are just looking at the overview of them, so we'll not deep further. If we'll talk about the prokaryotes, these are usually single cell organisms. The main difference or the main property of these kind of cell are that these do not have membrane bound cell organelles. That is, their nucleus, ribosomes, mitochondria, etc. They are just scattered in their cytoplasm. So, if we look at a typical figure of a prokaryotic cell, we find that they do have a cell wall which protect them from external environment. Then we have a plasma membrane, an interior membrane present next to the cell wall. Then we have a semi-fluid material or the matrix that are known as cytoplasm. Most of the cellular functions are performed in these matrix called the cytoplasm. Then they do have a scattered genetic material, that is the DNA. They are just scattered, and they have other organelles too, like ribosome, which help in protein synthesis and so on. On the other hand, if we'll talk about the eukaryotes, these are made up of multiple cells. Their organelles, the main property of these eukaryotes are that they do have these membrane bound cell organelles. That means their every organelles are surrounded by membranes. And if we look about the typical, if we look at the typical figure of the eukaryotic cell, we find that they have an external covering called the cell membrane. Again, they have semi-fluid matrix called the cytoplasm, where various chemical reactions takes place. Then we have membrane bound ribosomes. Here the ribosomes are present, but they are not membrane bound. But here we find that we have membrane bound ribosome, we have membrane bound nucleus, and within these nucleus are the chromosomes, the genetic material DNA are present. On the other hand, if we'll notice, we find that prokaryotes have their genetic material scattered in the cytoplasm, but here their genetic material are packed in the nucleus in a membrane bound nuclear membrane nucleus. Okay, then we have everything membrane bound, all the organelles like mitochondria, which are also known as powerhouse of the cell because they produce ATP, which are the energy currencies of the cell. We have endoplasmic reticulum. These are also membrane bound. So everything, every organelle here are membrane bound. We'll talk about these organelle in detail in our proceeding lectures. For now on, it was just the basic description of the cell, and that's it. Thank you. See you in the next class. Thank you.